Take it away, Eileen.
Hi, Eileen Becker with I Declutter You. Program there. Today, I'm excited and so welcoming to introduce Shanley Ten Eyck, and she is a Tampa-based, a professional organizer, KonMari specialist, and a member of NAPO Arizona and South Florida. She has experience as a container home organizer with the Container Store, and is also a Reiki master and a certified professional stylist, specializing in wardrobing. With 25 years of experience working with individuals, small businesses, large corporations, and how on the internet, Shanley has spurred into certifying in the KonMari method. Ooh, we're going to find out about this. With fewer than 550 consultants in the whole wide world, Shanley is at the cutting edge of this lifestyle trend, sweeping the nation. So Shanley, spark some joy on us. Woo! Take it away.
Hello, everyone. As she said, I'm Shanley Ten Eyck. I am a professional organizer and all those other wonderful things. So we'll get straight to the nitty gritty. Can I share my screen at this point?
Yes, let me make that happen for you. Right. Tell me if you can do it.
There we go. Can everybody see that? Yes, good. Okay. We should be presenting. Excellent. 1 second. Okay. Okay, so can you guys see this part here? The presentation? I can't hear you, so I need I can't see you, so I need somebody to say yes.
We also see all your notes, your speakers.
You do? Okay, well, there you go. You get that too. Then we're just gonna, we're gonna do it that way.
Okay.
I don't care. So we've already gone through the, I'm Shanley Ten Eyck, all that stuff. So here's a little bit about me. And I'm really sorry about the noise. I live right next to a major shopping center, so it's loud. I used to work at the University of Arizona for 15 years. I played the flute. I was in marching band. I love dogs. I drove a 1969 Mustang convertible. It was red. I've lived in 5 states now. Florida is my 5th state, and I have 2 teenage boys. And if you hear them, they're in the background right now packing for us to get ready to go to Cape Coral. I also helped my father-in-law build a custom closet onto my house, and we called it the Cloffice because it had my desk and my area. And so I lived with Visqueen taped over my window for almost a year. So that's a little bit about me. So today we're going to talk about these areas. We're going to talk about I don't even know what that is. What are you talking about? That's often a response that I get when I ask people if they know about the KonMari method. And so we're going to talk about what you should understand about the book, the 6 key things that you should take away from that, if anybody were to ask you about it. Then we're going to talk about how you sort by the 5 categories. We're going to talk about what it means to spark joy. We're going to talk about 3 mistakes you can avoid, what changes, what stays the same, and how to fold clothes the KonMari way. So this is me right here in the KonMari group of 100 people. And this is Marie Kondo right here. And so now what they're doing is they are doing virtual classes. So if you're at all interested in doing this, this is not going to be the experience you're going to have, but they limit the class size to 100 so that they can also be a little bit more custom about how they're sharing the information. And so just a little bit of background about going to a KonMari class. What you end up having to do first is you have to read the books. Then you have to KonMari, or what we call a tidying session. You have to go through the entire tidying session in your own home. Then you have to document that. And you have to submit the photos to a portal, an online portal. And then you have to be allowed to sign up for the class. Then when you register for the class, you go to, it's a 3-day training for us. And Marie Kondo does actually teach a class. It used to be that she would teach most of the classes, and now it's sort of course, whittled down to where she doesn't teach most of them. So so that's 3 days long, and mine was in LA, and that was in 2019, September 2019. And you spend your time just like at NAPO conference with a whole bunch of other people who really want to know about KonMari and the KonMari method. And so it's all about being with your peeps, and it's so much fun because the energy is amazing and everybody there is like-minded. And so it's just like being at NAPO conference. It's just a blast. So if you have any interest at all in doing that, I would strongly encourage you to do it. So what I've been told by people who have done this longer than I have is that out of these 100 people, only 10% actually become certified KonMari consultants. Because after you take the class, what you have to do is you have to work with at least 2 clients. One of them has to go through the entire tidying process, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And you have to help a second client as well. So you have to have at least 10 reports that you do. And so for each session that you do with a client, you have to write a report. It's 1,000 words only, and they max you out at 1,000. You just can't write any more. Then you submit those 10 reports, and they have to be approved. You also have to submit photos with those reports of your before and afters. You have to reflect on your sessions. There's a series of questions that you have to go through in your report. And once you go through that report and they approve all of your questions, then you have to take a test. And y'all, the test is not easy. You have to study. You basically have to read the entire manual that you get in your training class. And there is no training manual like there is for this EPO exam, other than your book that you get during your class. It does kind of help to read the books a little bit. Well, at the time, there was only the one book, The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up. But for those of you who have read this book already, you may know that it really is more about from the client's perspective as a person who wants to use the method rather than from the organizer's method. And so it doesn't help as much. So then you have to take the test and you have to think like Marie Kondo. How would Marie handle that situation? And some of the questions are really, really hard. The answers they're sort of ambiguous enough that it could be either of the answers, but it's sort of just like a one-word difference almost. And you have to get 80% or better on the test, or you have to take it again. And if you don't pass the first time, you get assigned a mentor that's a KonMari consultant that has been doing this for a lot longer. And there's different levels of KonMari consultancy. So you get assigned a mentor, and then you can take the test again. And if you don't pass, then you get personal consulting from Marie Kondo's assistant. And her name's Miho. And she's in this picture somewhere over here, actually. So, and this is her husband right here, by the way, should you be interested in knowing that. So, luckily I passed on the first test or the first try. Then you have to sign up for an interview with Miho. And so I had to chat with Miho for, I think it was about half an hour. And she asks you a series of questions. And then if she feels like you're a proper sort of KonMari material, then you can become a certified KonMari consultant. And as I mentioned, there's multiple levels. And the first one that you start at is a green. And so that's if you've gone through all of those steps, and you can stay at the green level as long as you want. If you want to be listed in the KonMari directory, then it's $500 per year to be listed in the directory. However, if you pass the test, you can still call yourself a KonMari consultant. Well, you have to go through all of the stages to be able to be called a KonMari consultant. And they kind of frown upon people saying, I've been trained by Marie Kondo. Because you didn't go through all of those other processes to become fully certified. But that is definitely something that people do when they take the class, but then don't follow through with the rest of the steps. So it just depends. So 90% of the people who are in this picture didn't move on to even become part of the KonMari consultant group, basically. And so there were a good number of people that were there that just wanted to meet Marie Kondo. And that's why they were there. They wanted to know how to make their house look better. They were literally there just to do it themselves. They had no interest whatsoever. I think there was one other professional organizer in my group. So that's the idea behind how to become a KonMari consultant. It's very time consuming. To move from one level to the next, you have to get 100 hours, and then it's an additional 300 hours. And so each level has an additional number of hours that you have to work with the client, submit photos, submit reports. So it's pretty time consuming, and they take it pretty seriously for someone to be able to call themselves a KonMari consultant. And so that's why I asked how many of you had heard about it. And it looks to me like about half of you, more than half of you, have been asked about the KonMari process, or have been asked about Marie Kondo just in general. Yeah, so there you go. So that's the idea behind that. So I think we already talked about this. If you have no idea. Yeah, so I'm going to read about Marie Kondo here. So Marie Kondo is a tidying expert and best-selling author, star of Netflix hit show Tidying Up with Marie Kondo, and founder of KonMari Media, Inc. Enchanted with organizing since her childhood, Marie began her tidying consultant business as a 19-year-old university student in Tokyo. Today, Marie is a renowned tidying expert, helping people around the world to transform their cluttered homes into spaces of serenity and inspiration. So you may all be aware of the report and survey that was done by UCLA Center on Everyday Lives and Families. They conducted a study of contemporary suburban America, where 32 Los Angeles families opened their doors to SELF, which is, again, the Center for Everyday Lives of Families researchers, and they found a staggering number of possessions and an array of spaces and furnishings that serve as a stage for multiple family activities and tell us a lot about who we are as a society. They concluded we are being conditioned through marketing to get stuff, buy stuff, find a place to keep that stuff, go ahead and find more stuff, and find more places to keep it. And you may all remember that George Carlin is famous for saying, you know, a house is just a place to keep your stuff, basically. That's sort of the PC version of what he says. So even better, go ahead and just put all that stuff that you bought on display so that everyone else can see how much stuff you have. So that's basically the opposite of what Marie Kondo sees. And her goal, the goal of the KonMari method, is to help the world live a tidier life. So in her #1 New York Times best-selling book, The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up, and I think this is the one that most people are familiar with, Marie took tidying to a whole new level, teaching that if you properly simplify and organize your home once, you'll never have to do it again. So that's the idea, because tidying is a tool and not the final destination. So again, if you had a client that asked you about the book, you know, what, you know, you find this book in their home and they said, you know, I never read it, which is oftentimes what happens, which is why they hire us. And that's okay. I actually kind of like that. What you would need to know is these sort of rules. And this sort of guides the entire process of having a spark joy moment in your home, and having each item that you pick up be a spark joy item. So #1, you're going to commit yourself to tidying up. And oftentimes people will say, oh, you need to help my mom, or you need to help my whoever. And I'll say, does your mom or your whoever need help? And they'll be like, well, no, not really. And we all know that's because when people aren't ready, they're going to fight and they're going to argue with you about what you're telling them, about having to keep that item, about having to get rid of that item. And it's not my goal as an organizer to encourage you to get rid of your things. It's my goal as an organizer to help you think about why you're keeping things, and think about keeping the things you have with confidence. And that's a real tenet of the KonMari process, is keeping things with confidence. And so oftentimes we hear about, like, you know, a declutter, 10 items at a time challenge. And so today, go find 10 things in your home that you want to declutter, or that you don't want anymore, and get rid of them. Well, the idea there is to reduce by a certain number of things, whereas the idea with the KonMari process is number one, you're supposed to commit yourself to tidying up. And number two, you imagine your ideal lifestyle. And if that item doesn't move you forward into your ideal lifestyle, then you should consider why you're keeping it. And if you do want to keep it and it doesn't move you towards your ideal lifestyle, then you're going to have to give up the space to keep that item, so that you're going to have to, you take the space to keep that item and give up something else that is also taking up space, so that you can have less items, if that's your goal, is to have less items. So this rule number 2 is the tenet of how we also start all of our tidying marathons. Is I ask the client, what is your goal? What is your goal for your home? How do you see yourself in 5 years? How do you see yourself in 1 year? If in 3 months from now that didn't happen, how would you feel? How would it feel? How would you feel if it did happen in 3 months from now? And so the idea is for them to start visualizing what a goal would be for their home. So my most recent client, I've been working with her for 5 months now, since December, and we're working virtually. She's in Arkansas. And her goal initially for her clothing section was to have a travel size wardrobe. And that's great, but that's really only for the clothing category. So for the rest of the categories, I listened. I was an active listener while she was going through that category. And she said, basically what she said is she wanted to be a strong, successful businesswoman. So the entire rest of the process was built around keeping things in her home that moved her towards being a strong, successful businesswoman. And so that was her ideal lifestyle. And so it's important to have that in your mind. And that's one of the things that you're going to constantly remind a client about using the KonMari method, any organizing method really, is to imagine your ideal lifestyle. The third rule from the takeaway from the book is that you're going to finish discarding first. So you want to go through everything and then get rid of everything that you don't want, say thank you and goodbye, and then let it move out of the house. Then you're going to tidy, and then you're going to tidy by category and not by location. And we'll go over more of that in just a minute. You're going to follow the right order, and I'll talk about why in just a minute. And that's the five categories. And then the rule number 6, and this is the one everybody gets hung up on, is ask yourself if it sparks joy. And we'll have a whole section on that in just a minute. So we already talked about whether or not people have had their clients ask about that. And so I think that we'll just move on to categories. So we're going to chat about sorting by category. And so from the book, what I teach clients, because I can't teach people the KonMari method, I can teach them how to utilize the KonMari method. Only Marie is allowed to teach the KonMari method. And so I teach them how to use the KonMari method by working through their possessions by category. So first we go clothing, books, paper, kimono, which means miscellany in Japanese, and then sentimental. And you can imagine that the reason that you go through the categories in this order is that you strengthen your choosing muscle, because most people aren't as sentimentally attached to or emotionally attached to their clothing as they are to, let's say, their wedding gown or their baby's first jumper that they wore, or their dad's sweatshirt or whatever. So you're going to work through the categories in this order so that you can increase your strengthening, your choosing muscle. So through any of these categories, if things are difficult to make decisions about, it's okay. You're going to give your client permission, because they always need our permission, because they feel like they're going to be breaking the rules if they don't do something the way that you tell them to do it. So you give your client permission to set aside for later. And it's going to be typically dealt with in the sentimental section. You'll be surprised how many times people will be able to deal with that item in another category, because what I will often tell clients is to just let that sit. And I'll sort of do this. I'll say, just think about that while you're doing something else. And we all know how we can be creative while we're not actively doing something. Go take a walk so that you can solve that problem. That's kind of what we do with the sentimental items that we encounter as we go along. So the KonMari method encourages you to reevaluate your relationship with your possessions, and it reframes your approach to help you keep things with confidence. That's the whole point, is not to have things in your home that don't make you happy, but then they spark joy, in fact, rather than just throwing things away. This is the reverse of how we typically instruct our clients to assess their items. So the goal is for the client is to surround themselves with items that bring them joy and make their heart happy. Your goal as an organizer is to hold a safe space for that client so that they can make their own decisions. That's one of the big things that Marie says, is she wants the client to make the decision. And we've learned this, I think, with some of the NAPO classes that have been taught as well, is that it's better for your client to make the decision because, number one, then there's no blame. Number two, they don't get angry with you afterwards because you tossed the whatever and they want it back, or you accidentally, shredded or tossed important documents. And that's why, errors and omissions insurance is around. So the idea here is for you to just help them and hold a safe space. And I always say this is a judgment-free zone. I'm just asking questions to gather information, and I'm here to help you work through the process, but I'm not here to make decisions for you. That's your job. So again, judgment-free zone. So how many of you have clients who can't figure out if things spark joy? So I want you to drop joy in the chat. And I'll just pause for a moment while you do that. And Holly, thanks for messaging me about the notes. I'm super fine with people seeing my notes. We're going to call it closed captioning for the day. So the idea here about people not knowing how to make a decision about an item, and so lots of you encounter this. What does it really mean to actually have an item that you don't know? Okay, so the idea is first you're going to find a touchstone and you're going to go from there. And so the idea here is you're going to find your favorite whatever. These are her favorite pink shoes. Out of all of these shoes, these are her favorite pink shoes. So now these are the ones that we're going to set aside, so that when we're going through that category, she's going to always reach back to those pink shoes. And you can tell when somebody picks up an item and it makes their heart so happy, they change, right? You can actually see the joy happening in their body. And that's what you're looking for. So what I typically will do when we start with the clothing category is I will ask a client to pick out their favorite whatever. It could be a pair of shoes. It could be their favorite whoopee. Also known as, your comfort blanket or your favorite shirt or whatever, favorite pair of earrings. It doesn't matter what it is. I want them to pick out their favorite clothing item. It can be an accessory. Then you're going to set that aside and you're going to keep it as their touchstone. And if at any point during that process, they're sort of vacillating about whether or not they want to keep an item, you're going to have them go back to their touchstone and you're going to have them say, does it make you as happy as that? Or you're going to say to them, does it make you as happy as your favorite pink shoes makes you? And if they're like, nah, not really, then you're going to say, well, I'm going to have you consider why you're getting rid of it, or why you're keeping it. And it's generally a pretty easy way for a client to be able to feel that happiness and for them to be able to understand what spark joy actually means to their body. Marie always does that thing where she goes zing, and it's the energy of that item is actually lifting your spirits and your frequency in your body, because items have energy associated with them. And as a Reiki master, that's something that I work with a lot. And the functionality of those two things go really well together. And we'll talk about that next. So the idea here is that the thing that brings you the most joy will help you figure out if something else is going to bring you joy as well. So this is how you work around indecision. So here's a couple of ways that you can help your client figure out whether or not something is a good thing for them to keep. So you're going to ask them about the history of the item. You're going to ask them about the frequency of use. You're going to ask them about how they used it in the past. You're going to ask if they're being honest about their actual answers for those things. And then you're going to ask about trouble points. So these are all very common practices that I think probably all employ now when we're trying to go through whether or not a client should keep an item. They're fairly self-explanatory. And so the idea, and if you want to know more, I'm happy to say more about them. But If you have a client who's pausing for too long, it's also okay to create a maybe pile. And the nice thing about a maybe pile is as they work through their process, or even as they work through the clothing process, the client that I'm on right now, I work in 3-hour sessions, and we had 6 clothing sessions. So that's 18 hours. Then we had a couple of sessions for shoes and accessories. So we were into like 25, 26, 27 hours of just clothing, just the first category by the time we were done. And I will tell you that everything that was in her maybe pile was tossed. Everything was donated because she got to the point where she knew exactly what she wanted in her travel size wardrobe. And she strengthened that choosing muscle so well with the things that she knew she wanted and that brought her joy. It was really, really easy for her to go back to the maybe pile and say, nope, nope, nope. And so I actually encourage a maybe pile. You can also encourage a try on pile. And if they aren't comfortable trying on in front of you, just start a pile, then they can do it later, and they will have gotten through enough value out of the sparking joy part of the instruction that you've given them that they'll understand when they put it on whether or not it does actually spark joy. So the challenges of letting go typically involve 2 primary reasons. And so one is that's an attachment to the past for that item. And number 2, it can be a fear of the future. And this can and often does include a scarcity mindset, which will lead to a third reason, which is based on money spent for the item. I mean, how many times have we heard a client say, I spent so much money on this, I don't want to get rid of it. And so the idea is that just because you spent money on it does not mean you need to keep it. The idea is that you want to keep in mind is that you're not passing judgment on their choices. You're always going to ask the client to think for themselves, that they make the decisions. Again, you don't ask for discarded items. That's the same as NAPO rules. You don't make assumptions, and you avoid diagnosing the client. That's always the same. Don't second guess their choices. So at the point where they do put something in the pile and you could see a different purpose for it or a different way that they could utilize it, don't say, oh, but you might want to save that for blah, blah, blah reason. These are important things that Marie teaches in her tidying process that I think are fairly common with NAPO as well. But the idea here is with these 3 situations that are very often the reasons that people have difficulty letting things go. And I'm sure that we all encounter this if you've ever worked with a client at all. Have some extra music happening. That's awesome. I'm sure someone who's in charge can do that. So the attachment to the past is like your items that are graduation gowns or your wedding gown or baby things. So if anybody's not muted right now, go ahead and just mute your phone, please, or your computer. And a fear of the future. And so again, this is the scarcity mindset. Marie addresses this by saying that if you have an item and you're not actually using it, it has already served its purpose by teaching you something. So I had a client just the other day say to me, oh yeah, I've got probably 15 black t-shirts. And I only wear half of them, maybe. And, there's that one that just doesn't fit right. And the other one that looks weird on me and that kind of a thing. And I said, well, so maybe the goal or the lesson with those shirts is that style doesn't fit you, that brand doesn't fit you. And the lesson that you've learned is that you don't want to have that brand anymore. And so why not think about passing it along to somebody else that it would fit and that it would bring some joy to? And he was like, yeah, that's really good. That's a really good approach to that. I hadn't really considered that because so many people are scared of getting rid of things because of the scarcity mindset. Well, what if I need an extra black t-shirt? Well, you just told me that you have 15 black t-shirts. Do you really need the one that isn't fitting you properly and actually makes you feel bad when you put it on? No, it doesn't bring you joy at all. And it's literally just taking up space. So let's say thank you and goodbye and pass it along to somebody else. And this is the way that you would walk through somebody through the process of why they might be able to let something go, is walk them through that they've already learned the lesson. that's been taught, and that it can bring somebody else joy. I think that's the thing that I find with my clients most, is that as long as they know they're helping somebody else, they're more than happy to let go of their thing, whatever it is. Okay. So we're going to talk about dealing with the energy and moving it towards positive. Does anybody here, well, let me rephrase that. How many of you know what Reiki is? Go ahead and drop energy in the chat if you know what Reiki is. If you don't post anything. And I'll just wait just a second. Energy, Zanat knows what Reiki is. Yay. Okay, so this is going to be a good, yay, Reiki. Eileen Baker, yay. Energy, Stacy does. Okay, great. And Lisa knows what Reiki is. Excellent. Okay, good. So some of you do. Energy, yes, woohoo. Gail, Julie, yay. Both know what Reiki is. Awesome. Okay, awesome. Yay. Okay, so the idea here for what Marie wants you to do is to fill only 80% of your space. And that's because 20% there leaves room for the good stuff to move in. And so when you open up your sock drawer, or when a client opens up their sock drawer and things literally pop out, that's overfull, right? There's too many things in that container. And so if you look at your space, and this is a lot of what the book club is about next or tomorrow night, is you can look at this as your space, and you can only fill up this much space, and then you fill it only up to 80%, you still have 20% left over that can bring more things into it. And for Marie Kondo, because she's Japanese and that's the origination of Reiki, and the Reiki practice is Japan, she melds those together really well. And you may have seen her in the Tidying Up Netflix show where she sits down on the floor and she actually greets the house. That's Reiki. That's Reiki energy. What she's doing is she's getting in touch with the energy of the home, and she's sending out positive energy to the home to have the home help the client to be successful through the process of the tidying method. So feng shui is another way of helping you organize your home. And I'm not a feng shui master. I'm not even trained in that, but I do have a lot of feng shui books, and I've hired a feng shui person to do my own home. And that and Reiki go hand in hand. And they're all often things that people will ask me about in connection with the KonMari method. And what that's all about is making sure that just for today, these are the Reiki principles. You're not going to worry. You're not going to be angry. You're going to be filled with gratitude. You'll devote yourself to your work, and you'll be kind to people. And that's important because joy resonates at a higher frequency than love and unconditional love. And this is why you have to touch everything to see if it sparks joy. And so that's why you can't just go through that drawer at a time, and you can't go through that, cupboard at a time. You have to bring everything together, pile all of your clothes in one place, and literally touch every single thing. And then we get through the process of when we talked about the 6 principles, and you have to actually go through the discarding process first, and then you tidy by location or by category. Then you only fill the space to 80%, leaving 20% empty for new things. And so when you touch everything, you're going to ask, does this fit into your ideal lifestyle? And we chatted about that before. So I just want to ask right now, does anybody have any questions? And we'll definitely have time at the end for questions as well. But is there anything that I've gone over that you have a question about now? Just pop it in the chat box if you have any questions. And if not, that's okay. We'll move on. Okay, cool. So we're going to go through the 3 things to avoid right now. First mistake number 1 is I'm going to ask you, do you think it's better, you as an organizer, I'm asking you, do you think it's better to sort by category or by location? So I want you to drop whichever one you think is better in the chat. And Tanner, I'll answer that question in just a minute, okay? Oh, another good question. Oh, great question, actually. I'm going to copy those down. So Everybody drop whether or not you think it's better to sort by location or category. Okay, we have a lot of categories, but also how it's used, Holly. That's an important distinction as well. Okay, so the two questions that I've seen so far, number one would be, what's the difference between Feng Shui and Reiki? Reiki is a practice of using energy to heal, and it's a healing modality. And you can use it when you're getting operated on to help calm the situation and to help provide healing faster. You can send Reiki out to a situation. You can send Reiki to somebody at the distance, depending on what level of Reiki that you've received. So I'm a Reiki master, so that's 3 levels of Reiki. And so I can do distance Reiki. And I can also send Reiki to a person who's sitting right next to me. So that's Reiki. Feng Shui is how you organize your home so that it brings the best energy into your home. And you would use a Bagua map to do that. And so there's different parts of your home. There's 9 squares, 3, 6, 9 squares, and each one of them represents a different part of your life or your situation, like wealth, health and family, travel. And so there's like a business Bagua map and a sort of a personal Bagua map. And I can provide those later for you. Remind me to do that. So it looks to me like most people are thinking that category, oh, and sorry, there was one more question. And that was, what would be the difference between, oh, I copied the question, but it copied the second one. What if something sparks joy to one member of the household, but not another? We'll chat about that in just a minute. It actually is one of the things that I go over in another slide. Okay, so first mistake is sorting by location. So it looks like most people think that category is the way to go. And that is helpful because if you sort by location, like, okay, today I need you to work in my kitchen. Okay, that's great, but that encompasses a lot of different things. That's both paper and books, because you've got cookbooks in there, you've got manuals in there for your appliances, you've got sentimental, and you've got kimono. So that's actually 4 out of the 5. It actually encompasses the 5th if you have things like aprons in there. So that actually encompasses all 5 of the categories for the KonMari process. That's sorting by location. And so you wouldn't be able to use the KonMari method specifically to work by location, but you could still employ the idea, the principles of, does this spark joy? So in that situation, I wouldn't be KonMariing somebody, but I would still be KonMariing them, even though they don't know it. Because when they pick up 17 spatulas, I'm going to say, okay, which one is your favorite? And then we're going to use that again as their touchstone. So you can still absolutely utilize the KonMari principles to organize by location. But if you're going to actually KonMari someone, you would need to do it by category. This also helps you remember how much you have, because when you start sorting like with like, and all of your spatulas are in one place and you realize you have 17 when you thought you had 3, same thing with black t-shirts. Right? We've all encountered this where somebody has 27 black t-shirts and they don't realize it because they couldn't find one. So they just went out and bought more. That's the mistake number 1. And it doesn't help you strengthen your choosing muscle to work by location. So number 2 is that you're going to have no goal if you're organizing with the KonMari method. So you need to have a plan for what your space will look like when you're done. Because if you're really just going in there sort of randomly and just moving things around, what's the goal in mind? You need to think about how you want to be using that space. And you would almost always talk about this with a client during your initial conversations when you talk about your timeline and your current tidying process, what works for you, what doesn't, and the true reason that they want to tidy, which is, again, their goal, right? So again, the travel size wardrobe was my client, Karen. We worked through all of her, the clothing, all of the sessions that we did with her the focus was the travel size wardrobe. But then again, I heard her say, I want to be a strong, successful businesswoman. And so when we got to books, paper, kimono, and sentimental, that's how we processed through those things. And excuse me, that's why a goal is always the most important thing that you can have with a client. Mistake number 3 is not finishing what you start. And this goes back to key rule number 1, which is committing to the process. Because if you just ignore it, this ostriching, I'm going to hide here, that doesn't help. We all know that. They should be thinking about you sitting on their shoulder as a little angel when they're making decisions in the future. Usually it's about purchasing something. Okay, they come across another beautiful spatula that they just love, but then they realize that here's you sitting on their shoulder saying, okay, does it spark joy? Do you have space for it? Are you already filling your spatula drawer to 80%? Or do you have a little bit more space? Are you willing to do a one in, one out process? And so this is, they need to be constantly thinking about you, but you've got sort of a planned obsolescence mindset. And that's why Marie says, if you only do it, you should only have to do this once, because you're going to continually go through those rules in your mind about, am I at full capacity? And if the answer is yes, then you don't have space for it. And if I really, really, really want it, what am I willing to get rid of to make space for that item? So again, the black t-shirt reference, because everybody has the black t-shirt situation happen with their clients. Could be jeans, could be socks, could be whatever. So here's a bonus mistake we're going to talk about. And this, Laura, goes to your question of the blame game. Everybody's always poking at each other. Well, this house would be so clean if it wasn't for my husband or my girlfriend or my whatever. So how many of you have clients that blame the mess in their home on someone else? So I want you to drop the word the word blame in the chat box right now, just to get an idea of how many have you experienced this particular mistake. Yep, good number of you. And this is hard. This is where it becomes hard, okay? Because the idea behind the KonMari process is that you only work with one client at a time. And the idea there is that person is going to tidy themselves. They can't make emotional decisions about somebody else's stuff. It's not their stuff to make a decision about. And oftentimes what ends up happening, and we've all seen this, I'm sure, is that the other person ends up blaming your client and saying, well, that was my favorite, whatever. Why did you get rid of it? Or I was saving that. I was going to make a project out of that, or I was going to do whatever with it. So with the KonMari method, we only work with one client at a time, even if they're married, even if they have kids, even if whatever, it doesn't matter. You work with that client. And in a shared situation like a kitchen, you would have them make decisions on the stuff that they use. So like some people, it's the husband who actually does all the cooking, and in which case that would be his domain. And so you would maybe skip the kitchen category. That's the nice thing about the KonMari process, is you can customize it based on the client. And so you might think about, if anybody has seen the Netflix tidying up show, you may remember Margie, the woman whose husband died, and she wanted to work through her husband's clothes first, sooner than Marie wanted her to, because really that was a sentimental, and really Margie would have done that last because it was so incredibly emotional for her. But Margie wanted to do them in the clothing category because that's what she knew she needed to do, and she was ready emotionally to do it. And so Marie said, okay, we'll adjust the process and we'll do it in the clothing category for you. And so that's how you would skip around, like the kitchen or whatever, an office. You would skip through that. And so the idea there is you would only have the client make decisions about their own items. And you're hoping, like we are with most clients, that the other client will then see how much easier life is for your client because they have less things, because it's easier to work in their closet. It's easier to get in and out of their drawers in their bathroom. It's easier to park the car in the garage because there's a lot less things in that garage now. They're supposed to inspire the other people to participate and then go through their own tidying process. So Laura, if I hope that answers your question, is that you're supposed to inspire the other people to want to do it and not get in the middle. And this is a NAPO thing as well. You're not supposed to get in the middle. We're not counselors. We haven't been trained to do that. Most of us anyway. Some people have, and in which case, you would handle that your way. But the KonMari method specifically wants you to only work with one client at a time. So nobody likes their stuff being messed with. So the idea here is to talk about what changes, because you're supposed to release things that are not serving you. And this is where you teach your clients to say thank you and goodbye. And the reason for that is there's a lesson to be learned from every item. And that lesson may be that you don't like those kind of sheets or that brand of t-shirt. We kind of talked about this already. And so often what comes up with dealing this idea comes up with books and papers and manuals and things like that. Marie feels like once you've read a book or taken a class, you have the knowledge inside of you, and thus you don't need the materials anymore. So we want to then move those items along to somebody else who will enjoy it, who it will bring joy to. And so that's why you say thank you, you served your purpose, and goodbye, and then you let it go. And that's what changes in somebody's life, is that they are able to do that. I've had many, 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 many clients who, months later will say to me, I got rid of those shirts, or I got rid of those shoes or whatever, because I just wasn't wearing them and they didn't make me happy anymore. And so it's easier to assess what makes you happy if you have everything in your home making you happy. The one thing that doesn't stands out even more. So we're going to, what stays the same is that we're going to save what matters most. And somebody's unmuted again. So next we're going to talk about what stays the same. But first I want to ask, how many of you have clients tell you that they avoid their homes or a specific room or part of their home because they don't feel comfortable in their home? So I want you to drop uncomfortable in the chat. This happens to me all the time. My clients constantly say, I don't ever go home because I just don't want to be there. I don't go in that room. I haven't been in that room in years. That door is locked. I hate going to my storage unit because blah, 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 blah. It's always about unmade decisions, right? So the idea here is the joy checking of an item. It looks like a good number of you have dealt with this. And so the way that you process through that, the point of a joy check is to discover and save what matters most. So at the end of a tidying festival, everything in your home should spark joy. Everything, even your toilet plunger. Because if it's just your utilitarian black with a wooden handle toilet plunger, that's cool. You need it. You absolutely need a screwdriver. But here's the thing. You now have in the back of your mind that elephants are your favorite thing. And when you go to Home Goods, the next time you might find an elephant plunger and you're going to be like, oh my God, I love elephants. And you're going to buy it and you're going to say thank you and goodbye to that utilitarian one. And then when you walk in your bathroom next, you're going to be like, hello, elephant. I love you. And then it's going to bring you joy. So this is how you're going to hone your joy checking process, is by knowing what doesn't bring you joy in your home, releasing it and saying thank you and goodbye. But the things that are in your home now make you so happy and they spark joy. So it should move you towards your goal of being whatever it was, a strong, successful businesswoman or whatever. There were so many times where this client that I'm working with now, she would have decorations on her wall that were sort of a little self-deprecating, like I kiss better than I cook. And she had her ex-boyfriend buy her that, but I was like, so let's talk about that. Does that make you happy to see that? She's like, well, it makes me laugh. And I'm like, okay, but that's kind of not a really nice thing to think about yourself. Does that spark joy when you think that thought about yourself? I just want you to think about that. And so she did. And a couple of weeks later, she said to me, I got rid of that. I got rid of that sign. And instead I put something up that says live, laugh, love, because that's what she was moving forward towards as a strong, successful businesswoman, was something that created a positive impression rather than something that held a negative connotation with a tinge of happy on top of it. And so Eileen, the question is, do you say thank you and goodbye to everything that they get rid of? You should, because that thing served a purpose. And if the client doesn't do it, I explain what thank you and goodbye is about to a client. And if they don't do it, I absolutely do. So just like with most clients, you're the person standing there with a bag as they sort through whatever. When they hand it to me and I put it in a bag, I say thank you and goodbye. Thank you and goodbye. Thank you and goodbye. I will say that all day long. And I will say to them, you will hear me saying this. I am being grateful. And for me, it's about the energy of the item because I want to release the negative energy and bring in only good and positive energy into their home. So for me, it's very important that I do that. And she asks, do you tell them to do it when you're not there too? Absolutely. So anytime you release something from a home, you need to show gratitude for that. And that's specifically with the KonMari method. Her idea is about being grateful. Her idea is about the energy associated with that item because she feels like every item has energy associated with it. So even your socks, what she doesn't want you to fold them over each other because they've spent the whole day working on your feet and then they deserve a little bit of rest. So instead of stretching them over each other, fold them nicely over each other. So that's why she does that. Same thing with your purses. That's why she wants you to take everything out of your purse and give it a rest at the end of the day. Kimberly asks, is it the same to say thank you and goodbye to a bag of clothes versus item per item? You could do it that way. Absolutely. And sometimes the thank you and goodbye is just in my mind. It doesn't have to be verbal. And they could absolutely. Sometimes it's too much for people. And that's why I do it because they're actively making decisions. And we all know that that's exhausting. You're the person who's standing there helping. They're the one who's having to touch everything and make a decision about it. And that's exhausting. So it's easier for me to say thank you and goodbye and express gratitude. But again, that's part of my job is to hold that safe space and allow them the opportunity to be able to just move forward with the decision. So it's your choice. You can do it either way. You could even just load up a whole car full of donations and say thank you and goodbye to all of that. You could do it that way. Whatever works for you and your client. This is an easily modifiable situation, but the idea is to show gratitude at some point that you're moving it along to somebody else to help them have some joy. Okay. So this will, again, help raise the vibration in your home, which will then encourage your client to enjoy their home and their spaces. They'll feel good using the items that they've decided to keep because they're making a conscious choice to keep it in their home, and that will spark joy in their heart as well. So that's what stays the same. So let's chat quickly about folding the KonMari way. I have a little video I can play, but it's like 4 minutes long. There's a ton of them. If you want to look, there's a ton of them. I have some on my YouTube channel. I'd love it if you'd go and subscribe and allow me the opportunity to be able to customize my YouTube link. So lots of videos on how to do this. You can get really specific. So you can do shirts, pants, socks, hoodies, dresses. The goal here though, is that you're trying to create a rectangle. So you're going for this shape, and then you're trying to fold it over. So you can fold this in half, or you could fold it in thirds, basically to customize your space. And I've actually got a video on my channel about pants, how to fold pants and customize the folding opportunity in either in half or in thirds to better fit your shelf space. So you don't have to do it exactly like this. I actually prefer to fold my clothes face down. She folds them face in. So you can customize it to however you'd like. I like to fold if I have spaghetti straps or like a bathing suit or whatever, I fold those straps down first and then start folding in from there. She does it the opposite. Just whatever works for you. There's nothing wrong about this. The idea is you're going to end up with this tiny little rectangle here in the lower right-hand corner. So the thing that you're going to do while you're folding is that you're going to use what's called iron hands to communicate your love and respect to the clothes. And you're going to smooth out all of the wrinkles so that they're nice and straight. When you take them out of your container, whatever it is, if it's your drawer or a box or whatever. So she says your hands can be your iron. You smooth it out and spread your love into the item. You'll feel it when you store it and wear it again next time. So when you take it out, it will be nice and smooth. It will be ready to be worn. It will be folded in a way that doesn't have creases and wrinkles. And I'll tell you that the reason that you get wrinkles in your clothes is because you're packing them in. You have too much in your drawer. If everything has room to breathe, they don't get wrinkles. And so that's another reason to help encourage your clients only take up 80% of the space and not 20, and leave 20% free. Let me check the chat. Oh, there's my YouTube channel. Thank you. Thank you so much, Laura. Okay, so here's a bonus folding info, how to store items. And so the idea here is that you are going to store dark to light. So dark on the left, see how we've got a dark dress here and then a light thing on the right. And then you're going to go left to right in terms of height as well. You see how this goes up like that? Whoops, sorry. See how it goes up? The idea here is things that go up to the right make your heart happy because it lifts you up. So I'm doing it the opposite. You go up that way. And that way it also leaves you space down below for some of these other containers that you might need to, customize your space using cubes or drawers or whatever. And the tenets of the KonMari process come from Japan, where they all only have one closet, right? And so it's important for them to pack everything into one space. Okay, so this is the boldest bonus folding info. And again, there's more information on YouTube about how to do all of this. So here's what we've covered. What is the KonMari method? We talked about the 6 key rule for the book takeaways. We talked about 3 mistakes to avoid, and we talked about folding the KonMari way. And I want you to know that you can do it. So let's chat about ways of getting rid of things. So I had the same client. She had 4 different colanders. 2 of them, she literally didn't even know she had because they were in various different cupboards in different places, like cupboards she just literally never went into. And then she found the one. And as soon as she pulled it out, it was that yellow Tupperware plastic colander that has a little handle. And her dog, apparently her brother's dog, had chewed on it. And she just laughed when she pulled that colander out. And even though the handle had been chewed on, I said, that's the one you're going to keep, because it made her heart happy. And she laughed and she was joyful when she pulled that out. Whereas the metal one that she didn't even know she had, she never used. I said, say thank you and goodbye to that one, because you don't even know you have it. And this other one makes you so happy. Look at your face. You're smiling. You're joyful when you pull that colander out. So this is part of the judgment-free zone and the safe space that you're holding for your client, is that you're reflecting what you see them see and feel and say. And sometimes they're so close to that, they can't see it themselves. And that's why you're going to mirror these things to them. And then that you would be successful utilizing this method, but not being a KonMari consultant. That's how you would utilize the spark joy process without actually being a KonMari consultant. So I can teach clients how to use the method again, but if you want to become certified, you would need to go through that whole process that I talked about earlier. So here's one more bonus for you. If you have any clients that you think need the KonMari method, I offer a 5% finder's fee for if your client books one of my packages of $2,500 or more. So that's $125 in your pocket. Second bonus for you is for your client. If you have a client who wants to hire me, but kind of still wants to work with you as well, that's cool. So your client can pay less by hiring me through you. They would pay me directly. We're not going to do that 1099 thing. We don't want that. So instead of paying $2,500, they would pay $2,300 and you would get that $200 difference. So tell me what questions that you have about the KonMari process. What else would you like to know? There's a lot of stuff that I haven't covered, but this was a lot of information as well. So I don't want to go too much into it, and we're right at an hour. Let me see what you've got in the chat here. Thank you. Okay, so any other questions, last minute questions before I go? I'm certainly happy to answer any other questions you have. You're welcome to reach out. Mentioned ways to get rid of stuff. Gail, did I mention ways? Okay, so I mean, that's local stuff that we would all know. The idea with the KonMari process is that you would find something that's near and dear to your heart. So if your client is religiously oriented, Thanks, Holly, for being here. You know, these are just the same questions that you would ask your clients when you're trying to get rid of their items normally, is how to best service and move that joy forward to somebody else. Not everybody wants goodwill. Not everybody wants Salvation Army. So is that what you mean, Gail, by mentioned ways to get rid of stuff? Maybe I'm misunderstanding the question. What about when they're stuck? Oh, great question, Eileen. So this is when you're going to go back to that touch point. And so if they really are vacillating on something, have them go back to that touch point. So maybe it's in the books category. You have them pick up their favorite book and they touch that and they feel joy about that, or they pick up their favorite spatula or their favorite towel or whatever it is. It doesn't matter. Have them go back to what they were super positive about, understand and remember how they felt about touching that item, and then see how the other item relates to that. And here's the thing, by the time you get through all 5 of the categories, that maybe pile is so small because they've just been super ready to get rid of things that they're just like, nope, I don't need it. I don't need it. And so what you want to do is keep them focused on their goal. Does that item suit you? Does that item make you a strong, successful businesswoman, or whatever their goal is? And it's a pretty easy thing to answer. If this book makes me a strong, successful businesswoman, it absolutely does. I use this book all the time. Your client will know the answer to that. And if they still vacillate, put it in the maybe pile. They don't have to get rid of things, but they'll know. At some point, they'll make a decision, and it may even be after you're gone, that they need to get rid of things. So how do you move the client along when they are going through items that they feel emotional about without being insensitive? Oh, that's a good question, Kimberly. And so anything that's like that, where it's emotional, I would immediately put it to the sentimental category. And at that point, their strength, their choosing muscle has become so strong that they're able to deal with it. They are also able to deal with things as they move along because they've been thinking about it all along. When it's in that maybe pile, it sits there and it sort of, ruminates with them, and they process that while they're sleeping. They process that while they're thinking about other things. And eventually they'll come to a decision about it on their own because of moving through the categories in that order. And if they're going through the actual sentimental category and they're being emotional about it, that's okay. My job is to literally just sit there and hold a safe space and let them cry or let them yell or let them feel the feelings. The idea of release it's different for everyone. Some people want to talk about it. Some people want to tell you the whole history of that shirt and why it's important to them and why their dad wore it at every concert that they ever played guitar at or whatever. So sometimes it's talking through the item and then they're able to say, okay, I'm ready to let that go now. But sometimes they're not. And so if it's a time thing, and this, Kimberly, I think is really just the situation where they're paying for your time and it's their choice. If they want to spend that amount of time on an item, they get to. That's their prerogative because it's their money and they get to pay you to be there to hold that safe space for them. So without being insensitive, I would just sit there and wait and hold a safe space. I, as a Reiki practitioner, would be sending them Reiki. I would be sending them healing and love to the right and perfect outcome of that decision. That's what I would be doing. And you can do that. You don't have to be a Reiki practitioner to do that. All you have to be doing is sending love through yourself. Everybody can do Reiki. You don't have to be trained. You can just think nice and kind thoughts about the positive outcome of this situation. And it needs to be the positive outcome because we never want a negative outcome, right? The positive right and perfect outcome of this situation. And you can just sit there and think that with your heart and with your mind and just sit there peacefully and quietly and let them have the space that they need to make that decision. If they can't make that decision, then it becomes part of the maybe pile and they'll make it later when they're ready. What do you do if they get overwhelmed by pulling everything out at once and shut down? That's the point of that process, Tanner. It is supposed to ignite overwhelm. It is absolutely supposed to do that. That is the point of that. And not everybody, this is not for people with hoarding tendencies. And I specifically asked Marie Kondo that personally myself to her with a microphone. I said, what do you think about this process? And she said, this is not for people with hoarding tendencies. Okay, great. So if you have clients that that tend to lean towards that, you would say this is not the right thing for you. And number one, if you're not trained in how to deal with clients with hoarding tendencies, I would hope that you would help them find somebody who is. However, the point of the pile is to actually overwhelm. And so the idea is for you to see that you have 15 black shirts because you didn't know that you did. You have 27 scarves because some were in the hall closet and some were in your gym bag and some were, you know, with your coats and some were, I mean, they're in 27 different places that you start sorting like with like. And that's when they realize that their sock drawer is full and they have more in their gym bag still that they didn't even pull out. So you're supposed to pull from everywhere: the basement, the garage, your that little sweater that you keep on the back of your chair because it's cold in the office. It's supposed to overwhelm. If they shut down, then you take a break. That's what you do. I mean, you would do that as an organizer anyway, not using the KonMari method. But people who want to be KonMari'd understand what the process is about and know that they have to do that. Not everybody wants to be KonMari'd. And that's why not everybody hires me to do that. I am a professional organizer with a KonMari consultancy as a tool in my tool belt. Also a certified personal stylist, also a Reiki master, but not everybody wants all of those things, but they hire me as a professional organizer first. Let me tell you a story about this item. Yeah, that's exactly what they do. That's the processing part. And it's okay. You sit there and you say, wow, that sounds really sentimental, or that sounds like it means a lot to you. You use that active listening, those active listening techniques that we've, that you can find anywhere, information on anywhere. And there's definitely NAPO classes on how to do active listening if you're interested in learning more about that. Okay, really enjoyed the presentation. Touchstone concept. Yeah, agree about touchstone. Yay. What about the positive and negative energy? Okay, great. So Eileen, that's a great question. Sometimes things have a both positive and negative energy. So my client had a suitcase full of her dad's items that she had moved 3 times from 3 different houses. And she had literally built her captain's bed around the suitcase. Like there were shelves on both sides, drawers on both sides, and then sort of a middle empty space. She put the suitcase there and then built the whole bed around it. But she knew it was there. In the back of her mind, she knew it was there and that she had never dealt with it. And so she had to have her son take her bed apart, get all of that stuff out, put the bed back together. And then we dealt with the suitcase in sentimental. And it was absolutely something that she had to work her way up to. She knew it was coming. She just set it aside. When she was ready, we went through it. There are many, many, many times where clients will actually deal with sentimental items in another category because they know it's there and they're ready to deal with it. And that's okay. Just deal with it when they're ready to deal with it. There are many times where a client will come back for the next session and they'll say, I got rid of that thing, whatever it was. And I'm like, yay, that's so great. I'm glad that you were able to make that decision. And they come to it in their own mind, in their own time, in their own emotional state. So, and so if you have an item that has positive and negative energy associated with it, like that suitcase was negative, she knew it was sitting there, but yet there was one shirt in there that she really, really, really wanted. And so she was able to get rid of everything else in the suitcase, but kept the one shirt. And so an item that has positive and negative energy, sort of like your plunger, you know, that we talked about earlier, it's okay that it has, you need it, you need a utilitarian item, but why not find one that is perfect for you because you love elephants, or your screwdriver that's blue with flowers on it, not just black. An item that could have a positive or both positive and negative, like this client had a picture of herself from her first wedding. She was full wedding regalia and she looked very serious. She didn't look happy at all. And so it was a positive memory of this beautiful dress that she had, but it was a very negative memory of a very bad relationship. She had spent a lot of money. She felt bullied into buying this picture. She didn't know where to display it. She didn't look happy in it. So that was a combination of both positive and negative. And she eventually was able to say goodbye to that picture because I helped her see, does that move you towards your goal? So that's the idea. Positive and negative, both things. Which one weighs more energetically in your mind? And does that part, positive or negative, move you towards your goal? All right, if it takes several sessions to go through a category such as clothes, what do you do with a pile of clothes between sessions? Great question, Kathleen. So I always start with asking my client, number one, do you I prefer to work on the bed because number one, it's up higher, so it's ergonomically healthier for everybody involved. I always ask if they have a different place to sleep. And if they don't, then we find a different place to work, like the couch, or we spread out tables or whatever. And so start with that. And number two, if you do like, and this client went through 7 different clothing sessions. And so what she did was she ended up just sort of scooching everything off to one side of the bed and she slept there. But it's also helpful in that situation, Kathleen, if what you do is you only do shirts, like today we're going to work on shirts, or tomorrow we're going to work on pants, or tomorrow we're going to work on dresses or whatever. So you can do a subcategory of a category to help out with that. Like then the third day, we're going to work on that dresser. And so what happens is you continue to remember the other categories that you already went through. Like some people have pants both in a dresser folded and also hanging on a hanger, or shirts, you know, t-shirts in one place and nice blouses and stuff hanging in the closet. You start building a mental checklist and wardrobe contents of what you own. And then I'll be able, and you as the organizer at this point would say, but don't you already have a shirt almost exactly like that? It's hanging in your closet, right? And this is where your active memory and active, you know, paying attention. This is what your job is. People think we just stand there with a bag, but you're also cataloging all of their possessions in your brain and remembering, oh yeah, you do have another black shirt. Yeah, it's in the closet. Oh, there's 5 of them in there already. Do you really need these 3 that are in the drawer? So making it into smaller subcategories is a way to do that, but that eliminates the idea of what Tanner asked about, which is the pile, which is the shock value. Okay. And that's what Marie is going for, is the shock value. If you haven't watched the Netflix show, I encourage you to watch one episode, and it's the one woman, it's the Asian couple that he has a whole bunch of baseball cards and she has a whole bunch of clothes. Her clothes pile, when she was done, is the largest pile that Marie had ever seen. The homeowner was shocked. That's the goal. That's the goal. Thanks for everybody for being here. We've got to sign off. Okay, so Kimberly, I feel like I would need a separate training to get rid of photographs. I can't even do that myself. There's this negative stigma circling throwing away photos in Hispanic culture. Absolutely. I used to live in Tucson, Arizona, a very large Hispanic population there. And so I get that. And that's where you would customize your method to the client. And photo organizing is a completely other whole category. And we have people who just do that. And so you would maybe enlist their help. Photos are sentimental. Okay, those are sentimental. All right. Oh yeah, there you go. Kimberly, next meeting in August is all about photo and video organizing. So there you go. But you would definitely put that in the sentimental section. Thank you so much. I'm so glad everybody got something out of this. And please feel free to reach out if you have clients who just have questions about the KonMari process. Send them my way. I'm happy to help. My favorite thing to do is help and to provide information, and that there's no charge at all for that. I would much rather help you than have you not have the answer. So one of the most common questions I get is about the new show. There is going to be another show. It's called Sparking Joy with Marie Kondo, and it's going to be on Netflix. And so not sure exactly when it's coming out. I haven't heard anything yet, but this is the information about it. And you can find out more about that. Thank you so much for letting me be here.
Thank you, Shanley. That was wonderful.
Thank you, Shanley.
That was great. Thank you so much for being a speaker. Let's give a round of applause.
Thank you.